and any one of us who laid down our lives to protect it. Including you. Especially you.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Dark Matter Season 1, Episode 3. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. We are recapping and reviewing every episode of Dark Matter in the lead-up to Dark Matter Season 2 premiere at the end of August on Apple TV. Season 1, Episode 3 of Dark Matter is called The Box. But before we get to this, I did say something in the last couple weeks about the sound effect that they use to switch between dimensions on Dark Matter. I said they basically use the exact same sound as Nintendo uses to demonstrate the Switch clicking sound. Like when you put the controller into a Switch device, it makes this click sound, and Nintendo has patented that sound. And I'm like, that sounds exactly like the same sound. Well, my editor, John, did get the sound effect for the Nintendo Switch, and also the sound effect that Dark Matter uses when it switches dimensions. And I am sad to say that they don't actually sound that similar, but you can decide whether you think they are close. So here is what it sounds like when a Nintendo Switch device clicks. Here we go. All right. And I'll play that again just so you hear it. Here we go. This is the Nintendo Switch clicking sound. All right. Here is the Dark Matter clicking sound when they're switching between dimensions. So, okay, like very different pitch, but kind
More
of the
ominous.
same concept. Yeah. This kind of lead up to it in the Dark Matter one. Here, I'll do it again. This is a Nintendo Switch, and then Dark Matter. So it's a little louder, it's a little brighter, it has a different higher pitch, but you can decide if they're close or not. What do you think, Patrick?
I think they're pretty close, but I associate the Nintendo Switch with happiness and a new trailer for a video game. Bite and bouncy, and the other one from Dark Matter with, oh, well, time to go to the sad times. Which one? They're both sad. They're both upsetting.
So, Patrick Klepek, what did you think of Season 1, Episode 3 of Dark Matter, The Box, overall?
I like that this show is racing towards explaining things really quickly. That is one of my favorite bits of any piece of media, especially shows that have core mysteries to them, as we talked about earlier in this episode about Silo. Silo is a show that drips answers to things, and it's a different approach. And I love that 3 episodes into this show, we are already like just ripping huge band-aids off, like stuff that could be,
final episode reveals.
The ending of episode 2 could have been like the cliffhanger for season 1, and instead, like, we're doing that in the second episode. The final shot, like, I will say, this show does really good, like, final cliffhanger shots. Like, basically every time it's like, I would binge this show if I could. I'm not. I'm watching it 1 week at a time, even though all the episodes are there just for you, so we can talk about it on this show. But the end of like this episode was like, come on. Like, I want to know what's happening at the end of that hallway, so to speak. And yeah, so I that's what I appreciated most about this. It feels like 3 episodes in, it has taken an incredibly dense concept, and there's so much more to explore, but it does feel like we've laid a lot of cards on the table. And now there's an opportunity in the rest of the season to just keep peeling back those layers. And they've now positioned our 2 Jasons in just completely different scenarios that I was expecting. I guess we're just going to do sort of parallel versions of each. Like, how does each adjust to reality in like their different versions of it? And that is just clearly not where one version of Jason is going and the other version of Jason is going. So it just sets a completely different set of stakes and ambitions for the storytelling that I genuinely, at multiple points over the course of the first couple episodes, I think I got a sense of where this season could go. I'm excited to be surprised. Now I have no idea where like one half of the story. I have a good sense of like where the other half, the troubles are beginning to emerge and where the tension points are going to be. But the other one, I have literally no idea what's at the end of that hallway. So I'm really excited to see where the show goes from here. And I feel like I'm getting a better sense of why so many people why aren't more people watching Dark Matter? I'm getting a better sense of that now, 3 episodes in.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strongest elements about the show as well. Is like it just blazes through plot in a pretty satisfying way. I don't feel like it's rushing at all. It's like, hey, this is about the clip that I wish it would go at. Let's talk about some of the stuff that actually happened in the episode, and then we'll reflect on some of that, and then I have some book comparisons to provide at the end as usual. So. Reading here from the Wikipedia plot summary, Jason number 1 agrees to work with Velocity, claiming he wants to regain his memories. He studies Jason number 2's research and realizes the latter discovered a method to travel between dimensions by sealing the traveler inside a metal box and injecting them with a chemical compound to inhibit areas of the prefrontal cortex and induce a state of superposition. Meanwhile, Jason number 2 becomes uneasy about Ryan's presence at his house. In Jason number 1's world, and also, Daniela notices Jason number 2's change in personality, end quote. So let's talk a little bit about Jason number 2's life, right? So there's some pretty interesting stuff here. First of all, we see that Daniela is not happy with how freely Jason number 1 spends money. I'm sorry, or Jason number 2 spends money, right? He's like, hey, you bought this bottle of wine for $100. Now, you really appreciate how dramatically different Jason 2's life must have been, right?
Right.
This is the guy who won the Pavia Prize and he works at a startup and he's probably used to just spending money freely. Meanwhile, transport him into the life of a community college professor, and he can't be ordering $100 bottles of wine willy-nilly anymore. That's going to create some tension. In addition, he obviously doesn't know anyone who's coming to this dinner party of his, and so he needs to write down everyone's name. Now, I just want to put this out there, Patrick Klepek. I also do this exact thing that Jason 2 does at dinner parties. Like, I literally take notes. And sometimes, like, I'm really worried about the notes being discovered because I'll use, like, pretty... crude, like not crude, but like
shorthand,
generalized language describe, tall Asian guy like this, and you can imagine how I can describe other people. Just so I'll remember them,
right?
And it's like, but that's what I'll do. I'll just like write like, oh, what's your name, and I'll write it down because it's like you like meet people and then you're like, oh, what's your name, and then you don't remember it. So I like
do
write
it in front of them.
Sometimes. Yeah, just like just write it down.
Okay,
write it down.
All right.
Wait, let me get this. Your name is this, and you are doing the PhD, and
right.
like I'll write it down. Anyway,
I gotta go to the bathroom now to put some. Okay, all right. Dave, live your life.
Yeah. I try to do it like more. You're right. Like probably after the initial name, I'll like do the rest out of view. That's kind of what I would do.
Okay.
But it did lead me to wonder, Patrick, if alternate version of Patrick Klepek replaced you at a dinner party. What would be the hardest thing they would have to navigate?
Well, I'd have to think, like, what is the most fundamental difference between the two of us?
The other, what was like the Patrick Klepek that didn't go into games journalism? What would that Patrick Klepek have done?
Well, I had a natural talent for writing early on, so I wonder if, but I also really like kids. And so, like, I've always thought like an alternative path would have been like teaching, like grade school kids would have been like a really enjoyable. So yeah, I guess if I just never got into video games.
Patrick Klepek became an elementary school teacher, but he's like, I wanted to become a games journalist. So he's teleporting from the world of elementary school teaching into your life at a dinner party.
Yeah, and so it would be asked.
Everyone knows about games. He doesn't as much.
Did you get that new Steam machine? The what?
Yeah, and then you'd be like,
$1,400 tiny cube? Like, who would buy that? You would buy that?
So it would be your proficiency. It would be your proficiency with what's going on in the gaming world.
Or like I wonder if there's a different version of me that doesn't have a diehard. Like part of what really blossomed with my wife was I liked scary movies, but that is something that like we nurtured together. Was like. That went from occasionally a thing I watched to like a deep, like all the physical media I own. I'm not a big physical media person. Like I don't own really any video games in physical form, but I own hundreds and hundreds of DVDs, Blu-rays, 4Ks of horror movies. Like, so people are always asking me for recommendations or little things like that. That'd be a tough one. I feel like elementary school Patrick maybe doesn't have the same sadistic tendencies in media. What about yourself?
I guess in this world, right, per our earlier conversations, the other David Chen went into law or business,
right?
Instead of becoming a podcaster. So teleported to into my life, people will be asking, "Hey, did you see the new Minions movie?" And they'd be like, "What is that?"
I do think one of the things, this doesn't happen to me as much anymore, just because my life is fundamentally different. But if non-public facing Patrick then became public facing Patrick, the first time that, like, someone approaches you and like says like, "Oh, I really like your work," like getting spotted in real life, how you would respond to that interaction would probably be extremely. I'm pretty used to it by now, even though it happens. I'm stuck in suburbia. I just don't see people nearly as much. So the opportunities are low. But like that would be like a very specific weird thing to navigate. So I was like, "Oh, like I really like the work you do at yada yada." What work? Like, why would a person on the street say hello to me?
And just navigating what it's like to interact with a stranger. I mean, I did have a wonderful breakfast yesterday with a listener who is in town, and it's just like, and it just requires some amount of skill is not even the right word. It's just like, just knowing how to handle yourself in that situation. Yeah, that's probably something that somebody who like teleported into our lives, we are like, I would say mildly public figures. You more than me. You're a more public figure than I am.
Sure.
And being able to figure out what that would be like and understand how to deal with that. I have to say it was kind of hilarious to me how bad Jason 2 was at this. He's like, "So you still like being a lawyer, right?"
You must love being a lawyer. It's
like he was reading David Chen's notes. Like in this version, I guess actually in your scenario, David, you've actually laid the groundwork to make it easier for alternate David, right, because you'll have deep notes for the other person to pick up on. They don't have to look up strange home videos.
They're not very well organized, I have to say, but
Sure.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on kind of Jason 2's attempts to make his life with in Jason 1's work? Obviously, like finance is a big thing, right? You can imagine, to me, Patrick, it kind of felt to me like a metaphor for having a kid, right? Where before Jason 2 didn't have a kid. Now he has a kid, and now you can't spend $100 on a bottle of wine anymore, right? Like, did you have to make that adjustment when you had a kid? Was like, hey, we can't spend this freely on the wine anymore. Like,
it's like for us, it was less spending less as much as what you realize, as you hit like your 30s and 40s, where if you're lucky enough to follow on a path where you start to make like good enough money to like do more ambitious things. Like it's why people start going on like trips in their 30s and 40s, because they have access to the disposable income that makes that possible, or buying houses. Like all like I'd see my friends who don't have kids and like, going to France for 3 weeks. I was like, going to France for 3 weeks? And then you sit and look at your finances like, oh right, I spend the equivalent of renting I rent an additional apartment. It's called daycare. Right. And I pay that every month, like for almost 10 years now. Like if I just had that money, oh my God, like it's all worth it. Like it's a trade-off you make, but in some ways it becomes, you don't really you internalize it up front. Like an adjustment is made. Like here's what we can spend to make all of this math work. And then at a certain point, it just becomes part of the rhythm of life. Like I don't think about the money that goes to daycare. That just gets taken out of the bank account. I know how much we can or cannot spend on like a per month basis. And we sort of have the rhythm to things. And then you meet other people where they don't have to operate at that rhythm, but might be at the same sort of level of like economic class of you, but they don't have the same economic burden that is like siphoned out.
Right.
I mean, like once my kids were 1 or 2, we both set up college funds for them. So I've forgotten the fact that we are pouring hundreds and hundreds of dollars per child per month into. So then when like I'm sweating like a Netflix subscription, it's like, oh, can I afford the $12? That's because I've just forgotten about the hundreds of dollars that I siphon per month to try and make college affordable for them when they are older.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get used to that, which is why if I was to buy $100 bottle of wine, my wife would have the exact same reaction. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, ooh, kind of makes me want to have sex with you. But like, what are you doing? which is what her response, Jennifer Connelly's response, is in the show.
Right. It just strikes me as if you're used to some lifestyle where you're basically a millionaire, it seems like Jason 2 is, and then you're teleported into a lifestyle where you're not that. That's going to require some significant adjustment, which, by the way, Jason 2 doesn't seem to be remotely interested in making at all. Like, it doesn't
some
feel
red
like
flags early on in this show. Like, just get whatever you want at the record store,
right.
son.
Doesn't feel like he's really trying to make this like a seamless transition. You know what I mean? I don't know whether the show's really going to delve into what it's like to manage a different person's finances, but suffice to say, he's not behaving prudently, I would say. We also do make a interesting discovery, right, at the end of an episode with Jason 2, which is that there is another baby. They find their son's birth certificate, but there's also a birth certificate for another baby called Max Dessen. And you kind of realize, like, wow, there is stuff about a family's history that you cannot learn just from observing them for 14 months,
nope.
right? Like, you need to be a deep part of their lives in order to understand stuff like that. And I thought that was kind of profound, and we'll see how that plays out in future episodes. But yeah, any thoughts on that big reveal, Patrick?
Well, it's the inner life of a marriage, of a relationship, is impossible to understand from the outside. And I suspect that is ultimately going to be the undoing of Jason 2, is at some point you're going to step on a mine that you can't explain. Like that pretty suave explanation with the car accident. I was like, ooh, that's chef's kiss. That's pretty good. We'll get into it.
Based on a true story, right? That actually happened to Jason.
Right. From a certain point of view. But it feels like it's the sort of, especially because he's being so aggressive, right?
Yes.
Like,
he's not like easing into this at all. Like, he's not trying to blend in, you know?
No, he's like, I will just be my Jason in this Jason's world.
Right.
And at some point that is going to cause some serious problems. And I think that is where he is going to run into, like, I'm not sure you ever could have like continued this on in perpetuity, but you probably could have given yourself longer runway.
You could have given yourself a few more months at least. Patrick, I think what you and I totally agree on is if you and I were going to kidnap and drug our alternate version self, infiltrate their lives, sleep with their wives, and try to raise their children, we would be smoother about it.
Yeah.
Is what we would agree on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
All right. What else happens this episode? Jason 1 tries to procure more information about Jason 2's research from Ryan in Jason 2's world. But he's discovered as an imposter by Layton, who tries to force the truth out of him, and Ryan from Jason 2's world is implied to be killed. Amanda breaks Jason out of confinement, hoping to return him to his own world, but when they are discovered, they both enter Jason 2's box, intending to flee. Inside it, they inject the chemical compound and appear in a corridor filled with doors, end quote. So, Patrick, any thoughts on what, Jason 1's escape and how that all plays out?
I would just like that. Look, I'm not going to sit here and necessarily look up a Wikipedia entry that explains the science behind dark matter. But what I like is when a show straddles the line between science gobbledygook, be like, yeah, I buy it. Like, hey, I invented drugs that affect the prefrontal cortex. So like, yada, yada. Like, great. Like, I buy it. Like, and I don't think the show is yada, yada. Like, it grounds it enough that it feels believable in a premise that is inherently high concept and kind of unbelievable. I do appreciate the show really early on is laying enough groundwork for you to buy into the plausibility of it within this universe. And that's so much what this episode does. I love the gambit on Jason's part to be like, I don't show me what we've made. I was like, oh, that's such a clever way to do essentially an exposition dump, which is what happens for so much of this episode, is a really clever exposition dump. But if you're going to do exposition dump, do it now, front load it. Like, this is, again, to bring up, a contrast with a show like Silo, where like a lot of mystery box shows, the exposition dump is, a character out of frame or a hidden document or a video clip that makes it all make sense. I'm sure there are more revelations coming, but I just love that in Dark Matter, so much of that is established early on, where you just feel like you have a great sense of how the world operates, even if you don't really understand all the implications of how big this box can get, so to speak. And I think as an episode that is really, it honestly feels like true. I know they released 2 episodes at once. It now feels like the show is actually starting. Like 3 episodes in, it feels like we have established an arc and a premise for the show, the 2 parallel narratives, and now they're going to go sort of off to the races in the directions that's been set up for the 2 of them. And I thought the way it does, again, a long Wikipedia dump of information about how the science of this world operates, they gave it dramatic heft and weight, and that is really, really hard to do. And that's a combination of good screenwriting and great performances. And so to get to the end of episode 3, which is a lot of characters just saying, here's how the world works, it's pretty remarkable. Like, I'm like standing up, like ready to hit the next episode at the end of it.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Why don't I share some differences from the book, and then we can wrap up our conversation today. So I do want to acknowledge, by the way, that I am reading the book as we watch the show. So I have not finished the book. And so some of the stuff that I say might not be reflective of like the book in its totality. Maybe like later chapters will fill in things in a way that I didn't anticipate. But the biggest difference, right, that I've already discussed here on the podcast is that in the book, Amanda is not Jason's girlfriend. She is just a psychologist or whatever at Velocity Labs. And she still helps Jason in the same way that she does in this episode. But the reason she does it is because it's the same reason of like, I didn't sign up for this to kill people and so on and so forth. And I think this is actually a really smart change. Like, I think it actually makes it so you're more invested in Jason and Amanda's relationship. Like she has some like emotional stakes attached to what happens with Jason in a way that she wouldn't have otherwise. The Dawn character who like shoots Daniela in the head is not even really a character in the book at this point. But here in the show, she has PTSD and she's really a loose cannon and she's unstable. And so I think that's interesting. At this point in the book, there is no Detective Mason. There's no like law enforcement coming in to try and figure out what's going on with Jason or anything like that. So I'm really curious like how that's going to evolve. But I think it's just to kind of up the stakes, kind of create some tension in the show where there doesn't really exist in the book. Finally, Patrick, I did want to just talk a little bit about the sci-fi gobbledygook that I agree with you is gobbledygook. Now, I just want to say, I think that the show's premise is very silly, and I don't think it is at all like something that could happen in real life. But it's cool. You know, Blake Crouch is the guy that came up with the idea, and he's a showrunner of the show. And you're familiar with the idea of Schrodinger's cat, right?
Yeah.
This is discussed in the book. And so I have a couple of excerpts from the book. The book, in my opinion, does a quote-unquote better job of explaining what is going on here. Now, better in the sense that they elaborate on the gobbledygook. Like, I don't actually think it's, you know, it's actually like realistic what they are actually describing happens in the show. But I did find the explanation to be more clear in the book. So I'll read some passages.
It's a little bit of the Hail Mary problem, right? In which like books by their sheer like volume,
Project Hail Mary, the movie,
Hail Mary, like are allowed to delve deeper into the technicalities in a way that is much more difficult. Again, an exposition dump in a book hits so much different than an exposition dump in a movie.
Totally. So talking about the Schrodinger's cat, right? The idea is that this atom is in superposition, right? The Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests a crazy thing. Before the box is opened, before observation occurs, the atom exists in superposition, an undetermined state of both decaying and not decaying, which means in turn that the cat is both alive and dead, and only when the box is opened and an observation is made does the wave function collapse into one of the two states, end quote. So it's basically like once an observation is made, then you choose that outcome. But before the observation is made, it's in both states simultaneously. So the question that the book and the show propose is like, what if you could put a human, not just an atom, but a human in a superposition state so that the human is both choosing to go into games journalism and choosing to go into elementary school teaching at the same time, right? But yeah, he says, quote, in other words, we only see one of the possible outcomes, for instance, a dead cat, and that becomes our reality. But then things get really weird. Is there another world just as real as the one we know where we opened the box and found a purring living cat instead? The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics says yes. When we open a box, there's a branch. One universe where we discover a dead cat, one where we discover a live one. And it's the act of our observing the cat that kills it or lets it live. And then it gets really mind-fuckingly weird because those kinds of observations happen all the time, end quote. The other thing that I thought was interesting about the book was like, basically, he tried to put like, you can try to put like a larger object into superposition. That's what he was trying to do. He says in the show and in the book that he tried to put like a small metal disc into superposition in a box. And the problem is what you have to do is, quote, if you wanted to put a particle in a quantum state in a lab, you'd create a deprivation chamber. You remove all light, you suck out all the air, turn down the temperature to a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. It would kill a human being. And the larger you go, the more fragile it all becomes. Even though they're underground in the show, there are all sorts of particles, neutrinos, cosmic rays, passing through that cube that could disturb a quantum state. The challenge seems insurmountable, is what Jason says in the book. And then Leighton says, I don't know what to tell you. You surmounted it, end quote. So the idea is like, you can't have it be observed, right? So you need to like remove all external factors so that it can't be observed. No one can look at it and anything like that. For like a particle. So then it's the idea is that the box does that for a human. It doesn't make any sense at all, but like the box does that for a human where like it isolates a human from any observability or status, and then you inject the drugs so that you're not like observing. Do you know what I'm saying? You're like deactivating that part of your brain.
Again, I don't need it to actually add up to real science. I need the rules to make sense within the world, and I think the show definitely accomplishes that. Like I understand the nature of the scientific achievement, regardless of whether it lines up with any sort of real life science. Like, I buy it. And I think the show does accomplish that.
It is interesting to kind of reflect on like, as a theory, if you want to put a human in superposition, what would you need? And it would be like some kind of cube and there's no air in it and no neutrinos can pass. Like it's fun to think about like what it makes
sense as somebody that doesn't understand science. You know what I mean? Like as a layman, can you listen to that and go, yeah, I guess that adds up. And then, of course, the scientist to the side is screaming because it doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. But
it's fun. It works for me.
It's fun to think about. It's like a fun little thought exercise in the same way that like a Project Hail Mary is. Hey, everyone. David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.